host, David Hill. It is so great to have you here for episode number 3 of the podcast. We are already jumping deep into local politics, local events, and all the things that are happening here in our community. And I'm very excited to have you along for the ride. I hope you're enjoying the show. I hope that you're finding some value in what it is that we're talking about every single week. As I stated early on, what's happening here in our backyard is not covered as much as I feel like it could be or should be. And there are things that are happening within local government that is really going to affect our day-to-day life. And one of those things that could definitely affect our day-to-day life is changing the boundaries of what is and isn't controlled by a certain town or a county. And it comes into the taxes that you pay, the people that are representing you. And, right down the road from me in Rural Hall, North Carolina, part of Forsyth County, there's something very interesting happening that you may not be aware of. The town of Rural Hall is going about a process where they invite folks that are not part of their municipality or their jurisdiction into their municipality or jurisdiction. And they're doing things a little differently than you may think it should go. And that is what kind of sparked my interest in this topic, and specifically in Rural Hall, because there was a very, very heated meeting, or several, that has happened in the last couple of months. And I stumbled across a Facebook group online run by a person by the name of Carol Newsome, who's a Rural Hall resident that has been covering the local town for several years and knows all of the details around what is and what has happened and all of the issues pertaining to the subject at hand. And so I invited her on for a discussion, and luckily enough, we made that work in a very short notice. So thank you to Carol. And without further ado, I want to jump into that discussion. And I also want to let you know, if you like the show and you want to continue to support it and listen to it, subscribe on Spotify. Here is my discussion with Carol Newsome from Rural Hall. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Again, this is David Hill with our NC Radio, and I am joined tonight by Carol Newsome. Carol lives in Rural Hall, North Carolina, and just got a chance to actually meet her for the first time online. Was able to run across her Facebook group, the Independent Hall Monitor, and the whole reason for me kind of looking into this was I, of course, pay attention to the town council meetings and that sort of thing, and Rural Hall had a very interesting town council meeting this week, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but I just want to just kind of make people aware that there was a lot of passionate discussion by public, and there's a lot of layers to this that we're going to try to unpack here a little bit. But Carol is a political activist. She's been back in Rural Hall taking care of her mother since 2015 and has been involved with politics for the last several years, but even before then. And so I want to welcome Carol to the show. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you for talking with me this evening.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Is there anything you want to add to that as far as kind of what people should know about you, or anything you want to, add to maybe just to kind of describe you and kind of how you got started with all of this?
Well, a lot of it comes from my mother, who did pass in 2015. And she had raised us to be very engaged and vocal about what we considered, and it was our responsibility to be active in our communities. And so I just carrying that on, and here in Rural Hall, seeing the need and where we had a bit of the absence, a voice. Some people, because it is such a small town, our population is approximately 3,400, give or take. And we have people, because it is such a small community, that are sometimes cautious about speaking out because you attend the same church, everyone knows each other. And I was seeing things that were being done incorrectly and questionably, and some people being maybe even bullied by our administration. And I just didn't think it was correct, so I felt the need. The name of the independent hall monitor comes to Rural Hall, even as a small town when I grew up here. When I went to college, there was maybe 1,000 people living in town. So we've grown some. But we had an independent paper, The Independent. And so the name, the Independent Hall Monitor, comes from the tribute to the old paper we had with Hall from Rural Hall and a monitor as in, well, we're keeping an eye on you.
Is the paper still around?
It is not. I'm trying to think. Maybe it is, because unfortunately that's why I think citizens such as you and I having to speak and work out is with printed news and local news becoming so much less accessible. We need people to speak out and make sure our communities know what's going on.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's definitely, that's part of what I'm doing, why I'm doing what I'm doing, because, I don't want people to have to go through a paywall or have to look at a bunch of ads just to kind of get caught up to date with like what's happening in the community. I want people to definitely, be kind of, up to date with everything and hear what is happening if they're not able to make town council meetings, or if, they're not sure how something is going to impact them when they go to vote. And, the more they know, the better. The more we all know, the better. And the better the community is, the more participation there is, for sure.
No, I agree, because that's the fortunate thing about the form of government we have, is that we can be as engaged or unengaged as we choose. We are not forced to vote. I would hope everyone chooses to vote and be engaged in their community. But again, we can choose. And
exactly.
I think it's important that I would like everyone, it would be very exciting for us to have much higher voting statistics than we do, but we have what we do now, and so the few of us that can speak out more should.
Why do you think that is, in your opinion, at least in the rural hall area?
As to the lower voting?
Yeah.
Apathy, maybe? Or lack of even understanding. I hate that it takes, we know that with the big ticket, top of the ticket, more people tend to vote. Here in Rural Hall, the largest election we've had of recent was we had when they did the referendum for ABC, as in to sell liquor by the drink. And we had almost 1,000 people, or over 1,000 people actually vote in Rural Hall. This last election, we had just over 200 people voting.
Oh my goodness.
And this was the council members. That was a year ago. We didn't have any council members up with this recent election. And yes, and that was for 2 council members and a mayor, and we barely had just over 200 people vote.
Well, that's a kind of a good segue. I understand it is a smaller community. I guess in my, at least in my own experience, a lot of folks kind of say the same excuses, like, I'm really busy and, I'm not sure why it matters. I think it's a matter of just not being informed. I feel like people, if they knew the ramifications of things, they would definitely pay a little bit more attention, I think. But accessibility maybe is also, to that information can also be difficult. I know for myself, and I'm not sure if you got a chance to listen to any of the previous episodes or not, but I kind of told a little bit of my story and why I got involved a little bit more so to do something like a podcast is because, I've got a young daughter. She's going to grow up here and in the area, and I wanted to know a little bit more about the folks that I was voting for down ballot this election cycle, and I had a really hard time finding any information on anybody, like, county commissioners or, town council type folk. And I was like, why is why is there such little information about it? So,
Oh, yeah.
you know, in wanting to do my own research and finding a lack of information, I was like, you know what? I bet you there's more people like me that maybe are interested in this kind of stuff and want to understand a little bit more. And so that's kind of why I started the podcast, and why I'm so thrilled to have people like yourself that are more in the know with what's going on in your section of Forsyth County and the community, and you know, active in politics and very engaged to kind of help people understand a little bit more about what's happening in their own backyard. So I really do appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity because, again, like you, I just want more people to be engaged and know what we need to be aware of in our communities, and that you do have a voice. We need to speak up, and we need to be heard and respected by our elected officials. They need to remember that the hierarchy is the voters are the very top. We're at the top of the pyramid. And they're supposed to be listening to us. And when they vote also, it's our conscience, not theirs, that they're supposed to be working from. It's our voice. And
yeah, very well.
More aware.
Yeah, of course. Well, on that topic, I'd love to kind of try to catch up the listeners that maybe aren't as in touch with what's going on in Rural Hall. The main reason why kind of we connected online is because of the most recent town council meeting regarding annexation. However, looking even more into a little bit of the history behind kind of how we got to this point, I stumbled upon some other things that were happening a couple of years ago. So I'd love, maybe from your point of view, kind of help people kind of get caught up with, you know, kind of what happened the last few years and where we are today. If you could kind of explain a little bit about, you know, the situations that happened in like 21 leading up to also this point.
Yeah, I guess I tend to call the day the town imploded was October 21st, 2021. There had been some tumultuous concerns that were a little lower. Not everyone was aware of them building prior to that date. And the town manager at that time, who had been with us almost 4 years, had been receiving a lot of pressure, and council members also. And it ended up that on that date, October 21st, 2021, the manager gave her resignation. 3 council members resigned. We had the town attorney, who had been the town attorney since the town had, I think before it had incorporated in 1974, resigned. On that day, no notice, everyone just resigned and left with the meeting. We had our town clerk, who had also been here, gave her 2 weeks notice. So we were looking at just 2 council members remaining, 2 of the newer members, and needing a lot of staff. And so on that day, we had two of the council members that are still now our mayor pro tem and our current mayor were running at that point to be on the council. And so they were appointed that day to fill 2 of the vacancies. And we still have 1 seat remained that wasn't filled until March of 22. And once they were appointed that day, we then had the former town manager. We'd only had 2 town managers at that point. The former town manager that had been here 40 years came in as the interim town manager for just under 2 weeks before he resigned. And then we had our next town manager, who had left the town at least 3 times prior, with their last position being an administrative assistant, had come back at that time as an interim clerk, and then was appointed on December 1st in closed session as the town manager, not the interim town manager, but as the town manager by our newly formed town council that had 2 people elected in that November that had been the previously 2 appointed people. Then we had the 2 that had been there, the mayor, and 1 council member who became the mayor pro tem in 21. And they appointed Misty Meadows in closed session. that was a violation of state statutes. And they did not give out the proper information, which led further with this to where we then were audited by the state in 22 because of allegations of misconduct and improper procedure. That audit became public in, I think, February 23. It was released to the council that, I think, the October before that, but it became public after that. And it showed that there were violations of open meeting violations, lack of providing public records, financial concerns, not that there was missing money, but they were not pre-auditing contracts correctly and dual signatures. And so this was all somewhat became very public. And then we had yet another, the Local Government Commission, the LGC, last year, so in 23, their report found similar. But again, there were considerations with contracts not being pre-audited. There were there were expenditures that were over the budget, so that had not been appropriated correctly. Not that money's missing, but still just the finances are not being handled correctly. And we're still dealing now with public records are not being provided, being denied. I've had a public record request where I asked for minutes from, I think it was March 28, 22, of which the public record came back, no minutes were kept, which is a violation. I've been asking for over a year for the billing for attorney fees. We had until October 21 of 21. Our average, we budgeted for attorney fees $10,000 each year, and we never hit that. We usually had leftover funds. From October 21st up until a little over a year later, we spent over $330,000 in attorney fees.
Oh my goodness!
On a contract to an attorney that was not pre-audited. And he was our interim town attorney as well as he was handling the lawsuits that came after the manager left. And that's all that's very convoluted and difficult. We can talk about that now or if another time you'd like, if you want to talk about the annexation, but this is kind of a base of a lot of the concerns and that continue.
So it sounds like to me, and maybe a layman's person, that small town government, some folks might say that it's like, people that have been in their seats for a really long time, they're kind of like wink and nod and kind of this happens and that happens. And, at the end of the day, does it hurt the public? Why does it hurt the public? Why should people care about this kind of thing? And why should they really pay attention to this type of stuff that may be happening, not just in rural Hall, but maybe let's say another small town like, I'm not going to even say anything anywhere close because I don't want to, and there could definitely be more things like this, but, why does it happen if nobody's, if it's not affecting me, what's the big deal?
Well, see, this is where I think people are so confused as to their responsibility. Almost more, we have higher voter turnout when we have presidential elections. And as we go down ballot to what we consider, the lesser roles, well, they're all important, but I think our local municipalities are the most important because they have the most effect on your day-to-day life. And you actually have more say in how that's done. And so as to why people don't always turn out or even engage with or understand that you should have a voice there is confusing to me, because the ordinances in town right now dealing with how the town rolled out the consideration of annexation. It was never even discussed to the people that currently live in town. And I'm unique in the position that I have 2 tax parcels that are in town and 2 tax parcels that are out of town that would be in what's considered the suburban fire district. That's where they're considering where the informational sessions with the annexation came up. So I can see it from both sides. But the fact that it was never discussed, and I've attended every council meeting since October 21st except for one. I attended all the agenda briefings until they stopped having them. Now they just have one meeting a month, and I've only missed one since 2021. And they did not discuss the consideration of annexation.
Well, I want to get into the annexation in a minute. I do think it's a great point that you bring up and that's what I've kind of found too in doing my own research is that, your vote for, let's say, the President of the United States or even the governor's race, right? It's one of, millions of people or hundreds of thousands of people. But in your local jurisdiction, your town, your city, your county even, you have a very impactful vote. And it's a pity that more people are not involved. A lot of people actually just go and will vote for the top of the ticket and then they'll just kind of leave the rest blank or guess, or even worse, they'll just pick up their pamphlet from whoever's handing out a pamphlet on telling them how to vote because, the Republican or they're Democrat, and they just kind of go down and just say like, yeah, all right, I'll just fill it out the way they say I should fill it out without even thinking about it. So, yeah, I think that's a great point you bring up, and I think it's very important. And it goes to show, too, what can happen when people are not involved and not engaged. Things like this end up happening, and, we get to that point because of that apathy, I feel like. And, it's really awful, but you have people that have to resign. There's money missing, or there's, what's even worse, there's people not getting informed. The folks that they're elected to represent aren't being kept in the loop, which is really awful. So who knows what's going on behind the scenes? Who knows, how they're handling certain things, but you really do need to follow the procedures and the laws, and you need to keep the public informed and think of them first because, ultimately you're there representing us.
Exactly. And that's what, for me, as long as I've been involved, I almost never really say anything beyond how I feel about the process, the procedure, and accountability, both in how those are done and accountability to the finances. Because I have an opinion about most things, but for the most part, I don't think local municipality should be overly controversial. It's pretty straightforward. It's the town's business, which is our business. It's our finances, our community. So we should be engaged in understanding. But it should not be overly controversial in any way. And as you saw the council meeting this last week, it was not necessarily the most respectful presentation of our elected officials to the public.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess let's get into that now. The whole reason I found you, Carol, is because I saw that meeting and I was floored at the fact that a town council is wanting to annex property that is not wanting to be annexed. And, folks are going and they're talking about, we don't want to be annexed by you. And this is illegal. The Forsyth County commissioners have even said that you are not allowed to be doing this type of thing. And it was quite shocking because I listened to all the town council meetings or the village or wherever it is within Forsyth County. So City Council, Louisville, Kernersville, Walkertown, Tobaccoville, Clemens. I listened to all of them. And stumbling across this one, it's like, wow, this is something very different going on over here. I wonder what that is. And then I found your Facebook group, which for all of our listeners, if you're not familiar, Carol is an admin with the Independent Hall Monitor. And I'll let you explain kind of how you came up with the name. I think it's a really cool story, but that's a big red flag, right? Like they had mentioned we need to grow the town. but it's kind of wild to think that somebody in a town council or mayor can just decide they're going to put somebody in their jurisdiction or their municipality that doesn't even want to be in there.
Yeah. And, well, do you want me to start with how I came up with independent hall monitor or the annexation concern?
Let's keep going on the annexation topic, and then we'll talk about the Facebook group kind of towards the end, because I definitely want to have a call to action for folks that are listening to definitely go and check out the Facebook group, and it would be great to kind of understand how you came up with the name.
Okay. Well, as far as annexation, and again, I attend every meeting that our council holds, and if special meetings, I'm on the sunshine list, I get notified so that I can be there. After 2021, we had lots of special meetings, so making sure that nothing got past us. The annexation they only mention expanding the town limits at the budget workshop last year, so in 23, which would have been April or May, and the same thing again this year in 24, they mentioned it again. And then not until the October council meeting, the agenda packet that came out a week before, our council meets every second Monday. Before the week before, they'll put out the agenda packet, and you can see now they put out most of the documents again. They stopped doing that through most of 21, 22, and until start of this year, 23. And now they would give the agenda, and that was it. Now we can see most of the information that they're going to be discussing a little better. They had in the manager's report discussion about sending out some letters in the future to consider talking to people in the fire district about possibly joining, and they would not use the word annexation, the town limits. And at the budget workshops, they had also just, about expanding just a little bit, cleaning up the edges, bringing in a few more people into the town. The suburban fire district represents about 28.1 square miles. Rural Hall proper, as in the incorporated limits, is 2.9 square miles. The fire district, the Rural Hall Fire Department, through a contract that's provided by the county commissioners, Forsyth County, is allowed to provide fire service to that 28.1 square miles. And that's the area that they sent letters to. They sent over, we still don't have a true count. They said anywhere from 2,200 to 2,400 letters were sent out to property owners in the fire district to come in for informational sessions about possibly, being included in the town boundaries. And at first they were going to be through December 12th, the meetings, and they ended up doing 7 meetings. And they were sending out approximately, they said, about 200 letters at a time, so that each meeting that occurred would only have enough, because the town hall just couldn't hold that many people if everyone came that received a letter. And they were also doing random pick, so that one neighborhood would not come in at one time, so that you weren't necessarily sitting next to your neighbor, so maybe not being able to network as easily. The letters, so the town proper, those living in the town, were not even told about this. They just did a budget amendment at this last council meeting for $12,000. That more than doubled our postage and mailing for the entire year's budget to send out these letters. They sent them out certified, not requiring a signature. So we're looking at possibly, and I've had a public records request in for more than a month asking for the total count and expense. But roughly we're assuming that since the budget amendment said $12,000, that's about accurate of what we thought. We've calculated between $12,000 and $13,000 from just what they've said at the meetings, just to send the letters to invite people in. Now these meetings have had a quorum, meaning we've had a quorum of our council. The council has participated. The mayor has participated. None of these meetings were advertised outside of these letters that went out to the fire district. So the town was not notified. The town manager stated that, what was it that he said, that the meetings were not, this is not a public meeting, he stated at the October 29th informational session. And he stated it was an invitational meeting for folks that are in the district, so it is not a per se a public meeting. It is open to the public, but there is the advertisement was the certified letter that you are getting. So state statutes require, if you form a quorum, if you discuss town business, it needs to be a public notification to the public that this meeting needs to be on the schedule and people need to be made aware. And I don't think they kept minutes. They had Alston Brown, our public information officer, and writing down some of the questions, but it does not appear minutes were taken either at these 7 informational sessions. So,
wow. Okay.
Open meeting violations there.
So Rural Hall is why are they doing this? Like, what is the whole point behind them talking to these folks? And you say annexation. For those of us that are not sure exactly what that means, you know, maybe somebody's just kind of getting into understanding local politics for the first time. Can you help understand exactly, like, kind of in a layman's term, what's happening, what's going on?
Well,
what's annexation, and why are they doing that?
Well, an annexation. Rural Hall incorporated in 1974. That means that you go through the state legislature and you request to become an incorporated town. You're a business, in fact, by that. The areas surrounding us are unincorporated. That means that the state covers a good bit of but they don't have the same regulations, ordinances. Like in town of Rural Hall, you can't shoot your gun. You can't burn brush. There are you can't have hooved animals. You're limited to 2 dogs. Well, in the county, it's not the same. So the difference between incorporated, also the taxes are different. Here in town, if the citizens that are in the area that's been being considered for annexation, or that have been invited into these informational sessions, their taxes right now, they pay county taxes. Their taxes would increase, I think, 33.5 cents or something above what they are paying right now, which it's almost 3 times higher than what they're paying.
So that would be for property taxes or sales taxes?
The property tax. Sales tax remain the same. That's consistent. It would be property taxes, which again, Rural Hall has to contract with the tax office in Forsyth County because we don't have our own, and then they allow us to levy the taxes they collect, and they of course get a small fee for providing that service.
So we in Louisville, it's kind of the same thing. We fund a lot of stuff through our property taxes.
Yeah, and then of course the other taxes that you receive will be your franchise taxes, the Powell bill, which comes back. The Powell bill, of course, recognizes it helps with roads, lights, sidewalk, and it depends on population and density of traffic. And then, of course, your franchise taxes will be your utilities, and then sales taxes come in. That, of course, the state provides those.
Sure.
And in the county, you have some of those still are covered, but it's just handled a little differently than an incorporated area.
Got it. So Rural Hall is trying to bring these other properties under their wing, their jurisdiction, so that now they'll collect that additional revenue from these folks.
Yes. And what's unusual is that I think Rural Hall would be acceptable to do a very small addition, clean up the edges, because if you look at the map, Rural Hall's kind of jagged, and there's even a couple little satellite areas of where it's town limits, but they're surrounded by county also. And that would have been areas that I don't know if they voluntarily asked to be annexed. I'm not sure. I haven't researched it.
Gotcha.
And right now, also with annexation, there's three ways that annexation can go. You can request to be annexed. That would mean this community, pretty much all these people in the fire district, anyone, if they wanted, they could request. There would have to be a referendum, and they'd vote to see, and if it passed, an area or the whole area, if it passed, could be annexed by voluntary. The town itself cannot do an involuntary annexation. They can request the legislature to do an annexation, which would mean that the people would not have a vote. It's become lesser. In 2011, the state passed, I don't remember what the bill, but that type of annexation can still be done, but it's just involuntary annexation is not done now. Like the county commissioner, I think you saw that segment, that a town itself cannot forcibly annex areas. The legislature could decide to, and that follows a little bit from the state constitution. It might be Article 7 that states that the legislatures can decide some of that as to boundaries of towns and
Gotcha.
other. But for us, with the annexation, they really don't have, because like even with the state statute, I think it's a resolution of consideration needs to be done before any concerns of annexation the municipality would need to do. Also, contacting other surrounding municipalities that you're considering discussing annexation. And where the legislature, again in 2011, I'm jumping a little, which removed the involuntary annexation. I think they've only had, it's maybe only been one annexation by legislation, and I think Marion since 2011 is the only one. There could be others, but Marion's the only city I know that has had a legislative annexation. So it's not as common as it once was.
Gotcha.
But Rural Hall overstepped the bounds by just, stirring, I guess, to kick the hornet's nest with this.
Yeah, it seems like it. That was a very lively discussion that I heard. A lot of folks really, kind of came out to the meeting and said, I don't think y'all are allowed to do this. I don't want you to do this. No, thank you. We kind of get along with things the way that they are. We're very happy the way they are. And so where do we go from here? Like, let's say, so now that, well, I don't know, are the meetings done? Is everybody that is going to be contacted, has already been contacted, has had a chance to talk to the town, and what's next in the whole process, I guess?
Well, partly trying to figure out first if the town has overstepped their reach by even having these meetings. We know that they have violated open meetings by forming a quorum, discussing, and not advertising the meetings, maybe not properly documenting the meetings. That the next step, too, is just making sure that the citizens in the area, that if you're pro-annexation or opposed to it, to contact both the town hall, and it's best to do so emails and letters, because email's the best because there's a digital tracking. But all of this becomes public record, so that those of us that are trying to keep up with what's going on, you can do a public records request and ask for all those documents. All the email correspondence, both to and from, is a public record if you wish to see it. And that way we can document from the meetings. There was not a positive response. There was no one that stood up and said, oh yeah, I'd really like to be annexed. There were some people that were maybe resigned saying, well, I sit right next to the borders. It's probably going to happen.
Sure.
But for the most, there were mainly people that were very unhappy. Yeah. And even storming out and yelling. It was raucous, and you saw a very tame meeting. You should have been at the informational sessions. They were loud. They were not very informative from the town, misinformation from the town, and even the town manager was saying, because with the easiest way to, the burning, a state statute, North Carolina NC General Statute states that if a municipality provides trash, leaf, limb pickup, you cannot burn, meaning you cannot burn your brush, you cannot burn trash. It's not allowed within a municipality if you have that service provided. And that was a concern for a lot of the people that live in the county, because that's how it's taken care of. And they were asking. Our manager kept saying, well, no one's going to come. Yes, the ordinance there is, and when pushed, saying, well, there is a statute, but no one's going to come and say, well, how big is that fire? As long as you have a bag of marshmallows and a couple hot dogs there, because or in the town, if you have that, you can burn for heat and cooking. And he was saying, no one's going to come and see how big your fire is. No one's going to care. Just, you're just cooking marshmallows, roasting hot dogs. And, well, the town ordinance does state that a fire can only be 3 feet, 3 by 3 feet. So this was our manager saying, no, it'll be fine. Don't worry about it. No one's going to come check. No one's going to come and count how many dogs you have, or until a neighbor complains. But that's the person who's running our town business saying, no, we'll just look the other way.
Wow. That's
I find concerning.
That is concerning, absolutely. I mean, it's concerning because, here most people, if they know the rules, they're going to do their best to abide by them, and then all of a sudden you hear somebody being like, well, these people over here, they're kind of like, we'll just kind of look the other way or whatever. But, for us, for those of us that maybe have an HOA that also, has rules and regulations that want to kind of stay in line and kind of, we're all looking out for each other, right? Or at least we should be. And, a community, even though we may not have the same, maybe the county versus rural hall or whatever, we all kind of look out for our neighbors, and we want our, our folks taken care of. And, if your way of life and the way your community has been for the last, 50, 100, whatever years, and somebody wants to go and uproot that and change it and kind of say, oh, just look the other way, even though it's in writing, it's law, and your taxes are going up and all this kind of stuff. Like, I can definitely see where people are against that. And so I know this was also brought up during the meeting, but is it even legal for them to do this? If somebody is not willing, doesn't want to be annexed, is it legal to do it? And if not, does the new rural hall town map look kind of like buckshot, where you have a couple houses here, a couple houses there, one here, one there, kind of thing in this fire district now?
Yeah, we don't know. The informational sessions never even, because there are on the Independent Hall Monitor, you can read direct transcripts for the most part from all those meetings with the questions and the response from the town. And the information given, the consultant Ron Nyland led the first 3 meetings, and then the town manager took over the last 4 because the consultant was having a very hard time maintaining the group. They were just very frustrated with his responses and his inconsistencies. The manager did a little bit better, but still inconsistent information. But they never responded to first when saying, well, can you do this, without our approval? And the consultant was like, well, yeah, the council can vote it. Well, they can't. The town cannot do an involuntary annexation, but not to make people feel comfortable, the fact that they can ask the legislator to look into it. It's not common, but they could still, if they were to convince the legislature that it would be more beneficial for the town and the community to do this annexation. The state could vote. Our representatives could vote.
So are you talking about the state House, state Senate?
I believe it's the House that would vote. I'm not 100% sure, so I apologize on that.
Oh, no.
Let's see.
No
Kyle Hall is in, which
Kyle Hall,
he would,
the representative?
Representative, yes. It would be in his.
Gotcha. Has he made any comment about it, or?
The county commissioner, the chairman, Don Martin, stated that through text he had responded, and we've had people reach out to Kyle, but he said that Rural Hall has not discussed their desire to go with the legislature.
Got it.
At this time. But
well,
anytime you hear at this time, that's concerning.
Yeah, exactly, because it means there's probably something that's going to change. Well, this is very interesting. I'm very eager to kind of see what happens next here. And I really do appreciate that in-depth kind of understanding that you have. And I'm really glad that there's people like you out there that are actually paying attention to all of the details and making sure and holding people accountable. I think it's fantastic. And that's part of kind of my mission too is, well, number one, it's to kind of help people be a little bit more informed, make this kind of stuff a little bit more accessible by, kind of letting folks plug in on maybe their drive to work, kind of get up to speed with everything, and then take actions from there. But this is definitely something that's very concerning, and I appreciate you explaining it. And where you had mentioned the Independent Hall Monitor, that's a Facebook group where we kind of ran into each other. If folks are listening and they're in Rural Hall and for some reason they didn't know this was going on, or maybe there's other folks in the county that may be listening to the show, or in other, maybe somebody in Clemens or something wants to help out, wants to get involved, wants to maybe voice their concern over this, what can they do?
Well, the Independent Hall Monitor is set up to where you can join if you want, or it's an open forum. You can just come and read and visit. Your name will not show up unless you comment or like. Otherwise, you can just kind of stalk the page if you want and read.
Sure.
And find. You can post to it without being a member, but your name will show up at that point. The information we're sharing is predominantly what we're gathering through School of Government, from the state statutes, and any other sources such as that. We're trying not to just do, my opinion. We do accept opinions, but we're doing our best to share the information that we know as it's somewhat documented as how things go. And we're communicating through that. There are other groups. I think next door there's a number of conversations going on about this. We're reaching out individually. The Independent Hall Monitor actually formed from a group of people that started working with concerns with Rural Hall when the October 21st, 21 implosion occurred. And some of the people that were uncomfortable going to the council meetings, we were keeping each other up by, I would do what I call it's the report back, and just for my own humor, I add the unofficial minutes because it just makes me laugh.
Yeah, I love that.
So,
and the Independent
report back.
That was there's some history there too, isn't there, with the name?
Yeah. Rural Hall, even as a small town, it's still small now with, I think, 3,400, give or take. But earlier in our history, growing up as a child in the 70s here, we had the Independent, which was a local paper in Rural Hall. It came out weekly, and it was not just fluff. It actually had stories. And I don't remember when it went away, unfortunately, as most, so much of our local news and print is going away. But so a nod to the Independent, and then Hall coming from Rural Hall, and then Monitor just to remind people that, we're keeping an eye on you at the town hall. So
that's great. That's great. I love it. And how many folks would you say are pretty active in that group now?
We have officially, it's under 200 people that are active members. There are people that visit about the similar number.
Mm-hmm.
And we have approximately 60 to 100 hits a day of people coming on and reading and responding somehow.
Well, that's
it's
good.
Not a large page, but it's enough when you consider at our last municipal election in 23, we had just over 200 people voting. So
yeah.
I figure our numbers aren't bad.
No, that's great. And hopefully, it continues to expand. I feel like people like yourself and that type of a resource is so fantastic. And, just the opportunity to stock like you want to, like you said earlier, or read some of the comments from people that are even more educated on what is going on. It kind of helps you, stay up to date and stay in touch with, what's happening in the community. And I think it's great because, when something does happen, like what's going on now in Rural Hall, I think it's really important for folks to be made aware of that, like what we're trying to do now, and you as well, and have them take action. So if folks wanted to take some kind of an action on this, what do you suggest they do? Should they reach out to folks at the county level? Should they make their voices heard by showing up to a meeting? Or if they're not able to do that, you had mentioned email. Is that who would be the people to talk to?
Yeah. Locally, of course, the town hall, you can write. Email's great because you have a digital tracking. It's very easy to keep up with when you sent your response and if anyone's responding to it. So you can contact the town manager. On the town's website, Town of Rural Hall, you can get their address. On the Independent Monitor also, there are multiple pages showing how to get in touch with the council members and the town hall staff. And you can also, there's a list showing all the representatives in the state. And so with that, of course, you go to what's your precinct and you see who your reps are and you can contact them. At this point, until they go to a legislative, but it's helpful to let them be aware that there is this rumbling going on.
Yeah.
And if whatever way, because some people they may see it as a benefit for them. So their voice needs to be heard. Predominantly, though, we're hearing more people that are just opposed to the idea. And I think it had been considered in town with, again, up until 2021, we'd only had 2 town managers since the town incorporated in 1974. And both of those managers had looked to see the benefits of possibly expanding the boundaries of the town and found that just the cost would be more to provide the services required than the incoming taxes would benefit the town. So, and I don't think this group has even looked at the consideration of that.
Interesting. Well, I think that we've covered quite a lot today as far as what's happening in Rural Hall, the annexation, a little bit of the history. I'm very appreciative of the time that you've given us, and definitely will continue to stay plugged in the Facebook group, and would love to keep in touch with you as well. And hopefully I can kind of maybe see you out and about in town, or maybe if I make my way over there, we can grab a coffee or something and kind of catch up. But I really do appreciate your time so much.
I would be happy to talk at any point because I am passionate about this. And I think the more we talk to our neighbors and to each other and to neighboring communities, the stronger our voice is, the more we feel that you do have a say and that we do have a right to that. And the power is ours to make sure that our elected representatives remember, they represent us. That's our voice they're supposed to be speaking from.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. It's a great point. That is the fact. And I kind of chuckle anytime somebody says something that is like, okay, maybe that is beneficial for the public, but for me personally, I would rather do it this way. Like, I kind of laugh at that because that's not what your job is. Your job is to represent us, which is, they need to be reminded of that sometimes, unfortunately.
Yeah, because, I mean, when you're running as a candidate, you very well might, you're going to speak to your, the people that are more apt to vote for you. So you can be a little more direct in that. But at the point that you are elected to a seat, you now represent everyone, whether they voted for you, did not vote at all. Anyone living in this community deserves a voice to be heard. Doesn't matter if they voted for you, if they even voted. They live here, they have a voice. And that's part of the wonderful aspect of our government is that we aren't forced to vote. It'd be nice if everyone did, but you still have a voice, no matter what. And I think even those that maybe don't even have the opportunity that are not allowed to vote, they still have a voice if they live here. They want to speak, whether their voting rights have been taken from them, if they're just denied them because of other circumstances. They still live in this community. They should be speaking up and heard.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. I agree. Well, I have a couple other things that I'm going to be covering this episode. And one of them is going to be regarding county commissioners. And I'm not sure what your schedule is. You're free to, we can call it now for our discussion. I'm not sure what else you got going on. You've been so generous with your time on a Sunday evening, but I'm going to mention something about the county commissioners, and you're more than welcome if you wanted to stay on, if you want to provide your opinion to that as well. But that's totally up to you if you've got to run.
I am. If you would like me to stay on, I'm happy to.
Okay. Well, you're free to stay on. I'm not sure if you had seen their most recent meeting, but I emailed the county commissioners this week, and there's part of the outreach that I've been doing to kind of do a 2024 year in review for the show, trying to get folks that are elected officials to come on the podcast and talk about, the things that they're most proud of, their accomplishments in 2024. If somebody wanted to kind of sum up what had happened in their in these municipalities, like the folks that are maybe not up to speed just yet, how can they get up to speed? And so I asked Don Martin and all the rest of the people in the council, and he actually did a pretty darn good job of, for a couple of minutes kind of going on about the things that they had accomplished. And then the topic about moving meeting times for the county commissioners. This is something that was brought up to me in my discussion with some folks that were running for county commissioner seats this year, moving it to where it'd be more accessible to folks that are working, regular 9-to-5 jobs. And Ray Wilson, who is a newer commissioner, had proposed to change the meeting times once a week to 6 p.m. And there was another motion to change one meeting per quarter to 6 p.m. for public comments and that sort of thing. Of course, the 2 p.m. meetings are still available, but the motion was denied. And there were some interesting comments that Don Martin had made regarding that change. And I was just curious, were you able to see any of that, or are you aware of that discussion that happened this week?
I did. I heard a little bit of it and I was not sure of what the outcome. I was not able, because again, I think was it 2 o'clock the meeting or 5 o'clock?
2 o'clock.
Yeah. So I caught part of it in the stream that was later, but I was not able to listen to the entire.
So the 2 p.m., so essentially what's going to happen, the most interesting part to me is the discussion about it and the reasoning that the council gave, the county commissioners gave. So they're going to be doing a 6 p.m. Hearing, an open, like a regular meeting for the county commissioners once a quarter. Okay. So it's basically folks that cannot make it to a 2 p.m. They're going to be able to do that for a 6 p.m., but just once a quarter. And it's, of course, this is all probationary. It's a trial run, right? And the whole, this is what I got out of it. I'm not as entrenched in local politics as some other folks. Definitely not quite there yet with you, Carol, but just for me, the whole vibe, because I'm a little young, that's just how I'm going to describe it. The whole vibe I got from them is like, this is not something we want to do. And the whole reason why is because like, it's not as convenient. Don Martin specifically had mentioned something about getting 70 emails about a topic, and only 20 of those emails might be good. And they all say the same thing. And, you know, it's better for him because he can kind of read through the emails and he can make a comment that's a little bit more thoughtful and address those concerns, right? But what I get from that is if there's 70 people that really care about a topic and they're going to your inbox and they're not going to the actual meeting that's public because it's inconvenient for them, then everybody else that's watching these meetings or catching up with those meetings doesn't see that there's 70 people that are all voicing the same concern and they're not able to speak. So the whole perception about an issue might be skewed to where they're listening to the county commissioners. They're not listening to the other people in their community that are voicing concerns, and they may have good points. They may not have good points. I don't know, but they all deserve to have a voice. And it's almost like, you know, a way of limiting dissent if there is dissent, or even, you know, people that maybe have positive comments about what's going on. You know, it's limiting their ability to participate in government. And he had mentioned something about, you know, calling in, like, you know, you can always call in from your office, but I don't know about anybody else, but if I'm at work, there's no way my boss is going to let me sit on hold for 30 minutes and wait for you to call my name and then, you know, have a quiet area and talk. Like, I don't have that type of job. I don't think most people have that type of job. And if I'm an employer, if I'm an employer, I don't want my employees sitting on hold for a county commissioner thing. Like, so it just kind of, for me, it made them seem very much out of touch with like a normal working person. Not everybody can do what they say they should do, but you know, if you move a meeting up to 6 p.m., is it really that big of a deal? Like, I don't find it to be that big of a deal, but the main benefit is that folks that get off at 5 o'clock or, you know, live in Clemens and get off at 5 o'clock, or Louisville or Rural Hall, they have a chance to actually drive down there and
participate.
Yeah, exactly. So that was something that kind of, it rubbed me the wrong way a little bit. I'm not sure now, kind of given my recounting of what those comments were. Do you have anything to say about that?
Well, I think generally we have to remember that we are working, again, from a large group of people. We are working to come to a consensus, which means that no one's going to get everything. It's not a winner-take-all situation for dealing with the public. Consensus requires deliberate discussions. It means we talk to one another, we work through difficult discussions and details, and we do what's best for the majority. And sometimes we do have to, in that consensus, recognize that, yes, people that are outside of the majority do have to, minority representation, that there are some people that if they are completely pushed out, that does have to, you have to work that in a different way. But consensus is not fast. Government is not fast because to do things correctly, we need to hear every voice we can and do the best we can to do as little harm as possible, to help people more and to hear the people.
That's really well said.
By changing the voices, not allowing people to attend meetings, to limiting meetings, which we had that happen by them eliminating the agenda briefings this last year, which are only required with municipalities, one meeting a month, and you have to also have a public comment period. The county commissioners have, I'm sure, a certain type of requirement, but doing it also, because where I'm very engaged, and I do have a little more flexibility with my schedule and the way I work, but I still can't just, because I had hoped to attend the county commissioner meeting where Ivy Banner spoke. That's where the chairman spoke against that Rural Hall did not have the authority to do this annexation. But I just could not. I skipped my lunch thinking, all right, if I push through, I'll be able to get there, and I just couldn't get away. And I am very engaged and very dedicated to getting to meetings, and I just couldn't beat it. So yes, I think a 6:00 meeting where people could come, because not everyone's going to be as engaged as say you and I are.
Sure.
The pressure in time and also the passion for it, but being able to attend when things are important to them is the way we build our community.
Yeah.
Round up.
I think too that, unfortunately the way, and this is going to get a little off topic, I hope you don't mind, but we're just kind of chatting. Unfortunately the way politics has gone, in the last couple of years, it's a major turnoff for a lot of people. And as soon as you start talking about it, they have assumptions about, maybe because of, what way you lean politically or whatever. And the conversation just kind of stops right there. And even though you may want to talk about something that's, important to everybody and is not as polarizing as, some of the things that have happened politically in the last few years, on a national level or international level, there's things that are happening here locally that like we should be talking about. And unfortunately, I feel like it kind of, people put those walls up and, you say politics, they're immediately like, turn off, change subjects, mute, that kind of thing. And it really is a pity, but I do feel that it's an important discussion to have just about what's happening here. But then, somebody like you or somebody like myself, some folks may not want to hear us because of who they
perceive us to be.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Which is really a pity because, there's so much to be gained for them on a personal level, from understanding what it is that's happening, here in our backyard. And in our own part, I think we're doing what we can to kind of break down that barrier, so to speak, and make it a little bit more accessible and make it, nonpartisan, because I feel like that's definitely important for, information, like something like this that's geared to be more of a public service than a self-service, is, I feel like it's important to have these types of avenues available.
Yeah. And well, on that vein, with the next municipal election in 25, all local municipalities Rural Hall is a nonpartisan board at this point. The next election, but the state has made it now that we will have to be partisan.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make sense to me because with the type of businesses being done with the local boards, it shouldn't be partisan. I mean, I have a hard time still, even with the state council, that our auditor and all of these have to be partisan. They should not be partisan.
Right.
Seats. In fact, I have a hard time just with a two-party election for the most part. I mean, we have, yeah, but it's just not. We're just not going to be able to elect anyone that's not, a D or an R right now. It's very hard.
Yeah.
And
maybe
I
not
think
now,
the whole
but maybe in the
partisanship.
future.
I'm hoping because as we know now that more people are registered, more people are registering independent. Now we still know that those votes they follow a party line pretty consistently, but still at least we're starting to think maybe that you don't have to be one or the other.
Yeah. And honestly, like we kind of mentioned earlier, your impact on your community here locally is so much greater than it is for those of course, there is still an impact on national elections and that sort of thing, and even state elections statewide, but county, city, local, town government, that sort of thing. But just get involved. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, get involved. It doesn't matter whether you're Republican, Democrat, Independent. Like, we should all be worried if somebody is doing something illegal, right? Like,
yes.
we should all get involved.
No.
It's not partisan. Like, it's, do you want a library or do you not want a library? Do you want to have trash service or do you not want to have trash service in your, town? Like, everybody makes trash. It doesn't matter what way you vote. Like, there's,
yeah. It should not be what party are you with? Well, this is just, it's like you're talking in your family. How do we take care of our household? This is just a bigger household.
It is. Well, awesome. Well, I'd love to have you back on in the future, and I'm sure there's going to be lots for us to talk about when it comes to Rural Hall in the coming weeks and months. And I certainly do appreciate your time again, and thank you for chiming in with the whole thing with the county commissioners. And I'll be sure to post something on Facebook. I will plug, that we've got a Facebook group ourselves. Our NC Radio Forsyth County is the Facebook group. If anybody is interested in listening, wants to get involved in the conversation there, of course, you can subscribe to the show on Spotify. That's where we host the podcast and we post weekly. This episode will be going live tomorrow morning, so that would be the 16th. And I've got some interviews kind of lined up in the next couple of weeks that I'm really excited about, and I hope everybody kind of comes back and joins us and gets to hear from folks like Carol and maybe some elected officials in the coming weeks too, about what's happening here in Forsyth County.
Well, thank you for letting me to be a part of today, and I look forward to talking more with you on this platform or any other, or just as a neighbor. So thank you, and thank you for what you're doing.
No, of course, and thank you as well for what you're doing, and I appreciate your time again, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Well, you too. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye, Carol.
Bye-bye.